Welcome to this installment of the NRC Safety Series, Safety on the Railroad. This series of instructional videos has been made possible by the National Railroad Construction and Maintenance Association, better known as the NRC. Financial support has been provided from the proceeds of our annual equipment auction. Donated equipment from the railroads has made this entire safety series available to our active members free of charge. The use of these informative videos is up to the individual companies to use as an enhancement to their existing safety program. It is highly recommended that a company representative be present during the viewing session. We have also provided a test to further reinforce the importance of the demonstrated safety procedures that should always be followed while on a railroad job site. Again, the use of this test is up to each company's discretion. The NRC accepts no responsibility or liability concerning the use of the content and testing materials provided in this video production. It is simply our intent to offer an effective reference tool that will inform and educate on the utmost importance of safety to those working in the railroad industry. Reproduction of these DVDs is a violation of copyright laws without permission from the NRC. These videos are for active NRC members only. The NRC is a not-for-profit organization consisting of railroad contractors along with material and service suppliers to the rail industry. Now relax, sit back, and enjoy this presentation. And remember, safety on the railroad begins with you. Prior to any day's activities, it is imperative to hold a job briefing. During this briefing, the following must be addressed: the day's work schedule, the exit plan, necessary safety protection, emergency plan, identifying of emergency trained personnel, establishing the chain of command, on-track protection, and any unusual conditions that may affect the crew's safety. The job briefing should never be overlooked and is required as a minimum for safety on the railroad. It creates strong communication, increases productivity, and could actually save someone's life. We will now discuss personal protection equipment, or PPE. These are items that you must wear for protection from harm to your body. They are worn to raise visibility on the job site, prevent objects from entering your body, and lessen impact in the event of being struck. The use of PPE can save you from injury and possibly save your life. PPE includes, but is not limited to, the following items: safety helmet, safety glasses, goggles or shields, reflective vest, gloves, work boots, respirator, ear protection, and leg protection. PPE must be worn at all times during the course of your daily activities and may be required at other times as well. Check with your supervisor, safety representative, and your company's policies for specific requirements. In this segment of the NRC Safety Series, we're going to introduce you to the basic safety rules when working around equipment. This is not intended to replace any aspect of the FRA Title 214 rules. It is a federal regulation that any person working on or around railroad track must have received the proper training under the FRA 214 guidelines previous to entering the right-of-way. Oil, hydraulic fluids, and fuel are the lifeblood of any motorized piece of equipment. Therefore, it should be standard practice that oil, fuel, and hydraulic levels should be checked every time prior to using the equipment. It is not the intent of this program to inform you of all the fluids and standard checks prior to operating the machine. Please refer to the operator's manual for lubrication requirements and normal maintenance activities. It is advisable that a checklist be produced and maintained with each piece of equipment. On a speed swing alone, there are 45 checkpoints for grease and oil, ranging from 9-weight to 44-weight fluids. Good documentation is a must in order to have safe operation of the equipment. Please consult with your equipment manager or supervisor as to what is required. It is your responsibility to ensure that the piece of equipment that you're going to operate is safe to you as the operator and is also safe for the personnel that work nearby. If the operator has a restricted view, then a backup alarm must be installed and checked for proper operation. The machine may need a change of direction alarm as well. Seat belts must be worn if they were installed at the factory. If the piece of equipment has a roll bar, then it must be worn also. Check with your company policy. Earlier, we discussed the basic format of a job briefing. However, a job could have some unusual factors that may be very site-specific and require some special treatment. It is your responsibility to understand these unique situations that can affect the safety of you and your coworkers. We'll offer a checklist of questions that you may ask the railroad or industry that you are working in. It is imperative that all persons, and in particular, operators of equipment, to know where and what these special conditions may be. Does your property have any low or unusual clearances, such as wires, gas pipes, signal cables, and power cables? What type of material does your railroad handle? What type of material does your industry produce? Are your underground utilities identified? What is your evacuation plan? Do you have any audible warning signals for hazards, such as chemical release or fire? Are there any buried hazards in the ballast? Are there any no-enter zones? Are there speed restrictions for on-track or off-track equipment? Do you require grounding of equipment? Is smoking permitted? Are there any tool restrictions, such as brass hammers or insulated tools? Does the job require any hot work permits? There have been many changes in the FRA rules pertaining to on-track equipment, especially for new equipment. So please check with your supervisor or safety manager for these new rules prior to operating the equipment. One new rule is that hand tools must be secured on a piece of equipment and may not be simply laying on running boards or platforms. Just as a pilot does a walk-around check on his airplane before takeoff, all operators should make a comprehensive inspection of their equipment before getting started each morning. We'll show you some examples of what to look for, but again, you must refer to your own company policy and operating manuals for further details. The tamper is a piece of equipment that is exclusive to being on the rail. Its function is to raise inline track and tamp ballast under the ties. The operator must key up over a tie and activate the cycle for raising, lining, and tamping. Some tampers only have the ability to tamp. The automatic tampers use either a red light system or piano wire to perform the automatic functions. Once the operator has keyed up on a tie, the tamper will raise and line the track until the shadow board either breaks the beam of light or comes in contact with the string line. Then the tamper will lower the tamping heads and the paddles will squeeze ballast under the tie. There are many safety locks on the tamper, and they are all different depending on make and model. As we walk around the tamper for our morning inspection, we'll look for obvious damage, such as broken, cracked, dented, or missing parts. We'll also verify that all bushings and pins are in place and bolts are tightened as required. The following safety pins must be checked for proper working condition and engaged during travel. Workheads and traverse locks. Turntable lock. Combo clamps. Shadow board. Lift frame locks. Buggy lock pins. Receiver buggy lock. Sliding rear axle lock. As we continue our walk around the machine, check hydraulic lines and air lines as well as electrical cables. Make sure they are tied secure and that there is enough slack to accommodate the parts that move while operating. Always make sure that the extension frames are pulled in when traveling. They have been known to pull down light poles. If you are not familiar with these terms, this could be a sign that you do not have enough training or experience in these areas. Be sure to ask your supervisor for more information. Now let's go out and see a tamper at work. There are many blind spots from the operator's point of view. While in the work mode, it is common for an operator to only look at the ties and raise his head up only once for every 20 feet of track. Now let's take a look at what the operator sees. This will give you an idea of where you should be so that you're visible and areas where you can't be seen. Never assume that the operator sees you. As a matter of caution, assume that he does not see you until eye contact is made. Notice how large the blind spot is when looking ahead. Some tampers even have little to no view in the rear. A number of tampers have turntables that can be lowered to raise the machine and turn it 180 degrees. When turning the tamper, the hydraulics may leak and the machine may come down. Never allow yourself to be under the machine while turning. Follow locking procedures before turning. The newer tampers do not have turntables and require a Y or loop to get reoriented. Never step over the connection buggies located from the front of the machine to the front buggy. This is a serious tripping hazard. You could break the beam of light and cause bad alignment in the track. Again, remember, the operator may not look up for 20 or more feet during operation of the tamper. If you must work behind a tamper while checking the grade, keep a minimum of 30 feet back. Always assume that the operator will put the tamper in reverse without notifying you. Operators must sound the horn before any travel is made. The only exception would be while the tamper is in the work mode. Ground people must stay clear of a tamper. If you must cross the track, do so at least 30 feet ahead or behind the machine. The ballast regulator is another piece of equipment that is rail-bound and can only work when on the track. Its function is to distribute and shape the ballast and to get the proper ballast selection to control thermal forces and transfer the load. There are three basic components: the front plows, the side wings, and the rear broom. When the machine is traveling forward with the front plows down, it will transfer the stone to the shoulders. When traveling in reverse, it will collect excess stone and transfer it to an area that is weak in ballast. There are a few safety locks on the regulator, and they are all different depending on make and model. As we walk around the regulator for our morning inspection, we'll look for obvious damage, such as broken, cracked, dented, or missing parts. We'll also verify that all bushings and pins are in place and bolts are tightened as required. The following safety pins must be checked for proper working condition and engaged during travel. These would represent locks for a Kershaw regulator, plow blade locks, wing locks, broom locks, turntable lock. Make sure the rail sweeps are intact and just barely touching the top of the rail. If cable web sweeps are used, make sure they are set properly to remove the ballast from the web of the rail. Make sure that all broom hoses are in place and functional. Check the broom box side doors for proper function. Now we'll take a look at a regulator in action. The side wings are used for a number of ballast transfers. They can carry ballast ahead or behind in order to shape the shoulder. They can also pull ballast up on top of the end of the ties, and then by using the plows, it can be transferred to the cribs. Using all the attachments properly, you'll be able to transfer ballast from the right side to the left side. Extreme care must be taken to avoid manholes, rocks, or other obstructions. If the wing makes contact with a solid object, it could easily derail the machine. The broom is the attachment at the rear of the machine. Under the shroud is a big rotating broom. When lowered, it will sweep the loose ballast from the top of the ties. Always remember that pieces of ballast will be flying everywhere during the brooming. Stay clear. Rocks can fly up to 30 feet, even with the broom box engaged. The regulator is also another piece of equipment that needs room. The operator is focusing on the movement of ballast and may not look around for distances as far as hundreds of feet of track. Let's take a look from the operator's vantage point. While there may only be a few apparent blind spots, always remember that the operator may not be looking at you. Give the regulator the right of way and always expect the unexpected. Most regulators have turntables, so follow the proper procedure and ensure that the hydraulics to the turning cylinder are locked. The grapple truck is another very versatile piece of equipment. They can come with or without high rail. You may hear them being called a log truck or Prentice loader. The loader portion can be mounted on the back, middle, or front of the flatbed of the truck. The most common setup for railroad use is to mount the loader in the rear. The operator needs to climb a ladder in order to sit in the seat to operate the loader. The grapple can easily handle rail, ties, plates, spikes, and just about any material used to build railroad track. Some contractors have even devised a clamshell bucket for handling ballast. It is not advisable to use a grapple truck to handle continuous welded rail. When doing a walk-around for a grapple truck, You must remember that you are doing an inspection on a truck and the grapple loader. Inspect the truck as you would any flatbed truck. The loader portion has some specific checks. The high rail gear must be pinned in the up position when on the rubber. When operating this machine, it is imperative that the outriggers be equipped with angled extension so they can be firmly positioned on top of a tie or between ties. Never operate this machine without the outriggers in position. Check the power takeoff for positive engagement and that no leaks in the hydraulic system are observed. If using a remote system, check with your supervisor on the operating procedure. Confirm that the steering lock is adjusted properly to maintain a straight front wheel while operating on the rail. Check high rail locks and pins. Check that the swing prevention is engaged and working properly. Verify that the high seat is secured tightly. Make sure that all levers function properly and that there is no leaks in the hydraulic system. Now let's go out and watch a grapple truck working. This piece of equipment utilizes outriggers to make for a safe and stable hoist. Never swing to the side without engaging the outriggers. Never travel with the boom to the side. The boom must be secured and unable to shift to the side while traveling. The grapple trucks come with an optional seat-mounted box that allows the operator to move the machine without having to climb down. Use extreme care when using the option and follow all rules that come with this attachment. Engaging and disengaging the outriggers must only be done when the boom is in line with the truck. Never release the outriggers if the boom is to the side. The operator should never swing a load over workers' heads. Always use care when swinging a load. Never abruptly stop a load unless extreme emergency requires this action. Use gradual movement. Remember that some older machines may increase hydraulic pressure to one cylinder while decreasing pressure to another. Never operate this piece of equipment unless you are fully qualified and given permission from your supervisor. Now let's take a look at what the operator sees. It is the operator's responsibility to ensure that no ground personnel are within the working zone or in harm's way if the machine were to be out of control. If personnel must be within the working zone, then an understanding must be reached between the operator and the ground people. The operator has the final word on procedure. Please check with your supervisor, safety manager, or company policy for further details. The spiker is a piece of equipment that has two specific functions: to nip ties and drive spikes. Most spikers are capable of driving spikes in both sides of the tie and requires two operators to do so. Some spikers have nippers to pull the tie up tight to the underside of the tie plate. When the nippers are tight, the spikes are driven into the tie either by impact or simply air pressure to push them into the tie. Spikers have many pinch points and awkward areas to reach. Never place your hands in any part of the working area while driving spikes. It is a safety regulation that loose clothing is not to be worn while operating or maintaining this piece of equipment. Safety work boots and eye protection are a must while operating. A hard hat and gloves are further recommended. Please check with your supervisor or safety manager for the required PPE. There is a possibility of flying metal. Never remove any standard guards or spike deflector mats during operation. There are quite a few locking pins that you must be familiar with. Some manufacturers may differ, so always check the operating manual for locations and safety precautions. The pins or locks are as follows. Turntable lock. Inner and outer workhead locks. Guide roller locks. Gauger housing locks. Gauger buggy locks. Boom and winch pins. Nipper assembly lock. Brakes for towing. And above all, use extreme caution when working or performing maintenance on this piece of equipment. Fatalities have occurred due to misuse. Understand this machine completely and always use proper safety techniques. Now let's watch a spiker working. Some blind spots may be encountered when operating the Hydro Spiker. This is due to the operator focusing on lining up the spikes to be driven. The Spiker is notorious for jamming up. If a jam occurs, the lockout-tagout procedure must be used to free the jam. Never crawl under a machine without following the proper procedure. Fatalities have occurred when ignoring lockout-tagout procedures. The Spiker is usually within a lineup of machines when working in a tie gang or doing a rail change. The Spiker is also used in new construction, especially when equipped with a gauger. Make sure you understand the hazards of operating this piece of equipment before using it. If you work on or operate equipment, then you must be very familiar with your company policy as it relates to lockout-tagout. There have been serious injuries and even fatalities from not following the proper procedure. We're going to cover some generic activities that must be done prior to performing maintenance or repairs on equipment. This would also include activities such as lubricating, unjamming, cleaning, or any time your body would be within the danger zone. It is your responsibility to become well-versed in your company policy and procedures. Lockout-tagout must be used to ensure that no energy source is available to the machine. This includes activities such as relieving air pressure or other stored energy. The person responsible for lockout-tagout is the authorized person and is at the greatest risk of injury. This person must have the proper training to perform this task. Railroad equipment is unique, and a procedure for each piece should be written and maintained with the equipment. This is a requirement of OSHA. The power switch or device must have the capability to be disabled. so no one can turn the power supply on. The definition of lockout is to use a physical locking device to ensure that no energy supply can be produced. The definition of tag out simply means to use a warning tag in conjunction with the physical device. It is strongly recommended that power switches be retrofitted with a locking device. The tag must be equipped with a non-reusable strap. Tags can only be removed by the authorized person. Tags must also be understandable to all employees in the area. The following is a generic lockout-tagout procedure and must be done in this order. Prepare for shutdown. Know the energy source and know how to control it. Identify all affected employees, such as helpers, operators, mechanics, and your supervisor. Shut down the piece of equipment. Make sure it is in the clear and not in the way of other operating equipment. Also make certain that when working on the equipment, you will not be fouling any other track. Isolate the machine from the energy source. It could be an engine, air compressor, hydraulic power, or any form of energy. Apply all locks and tags to the equipment. Refer to the specific procedure for the equipment that you are working on. Release all stored energy, such as bleeding air pressure, blocking hanging parts, draining lines, cool down time, or any other activity that will prevent a device from bleeding off. Turntables or tamper workheads are an example. They must be locked in the up position. Verify that no power source is available to start the equipment by operating switches or buttons. Make sure they are returned to the normal position. Now you are ready to perform the maintenance or repair of this piece of equipment. Upon completion, remember to release lockout, tagout. Lockout, tagout procedures must be inspected annually. Remember, this is just a generic procedure and is not meant to cover everything that is involved with specific pieces of equipment. You must check your company policy and the specific procedure for the piece of equipment that you are working on. While we have given you the basics of working around some of the equipment available for use on the railroad, we strongly suggest that you learn in more depth from your individual companies. If you're uncomfortable with operating equipment or unsure about being around equipment, please notify your supervisor. We must respect the equipment, but should not be afraid of it. Proper training and experience are vital to your safety and the safety of personnel that work around equipment. Ultimately, it serves to provide a good work environment and get you home safe to your family. Remember that safety starts with you. Now that we've concluded our presentation about safety with railway maintenance equipment, it's time for you to take the test. If your company has not implemented this test as part of its safety practices, we encourage you to take it as part of your own safety program. We also invite you to view all the installments of the NRC Safety Series and watch them periodically as a refresher. When it comes to safety on the railroad, we're counting on everyone to do their part by being as informed and knowledgeable as possible. If you have any questions or comments, please ask your safety manager or your immediate supervisor. Let's work together so we can all make it home safely to our families. Thank you for your time, and make it your job to keep the railroad work sites safe.